Good afternoon and welcome to today's edition of 4-H Live Online Learning. Once again, I'm your host, Blake Gazaway, and today we have another project that we're going to be building for our outdoor friends to go inside with what we did on the previous episode for woodworking, that we built a birdhouse. So before we get going, as we always do with our 4-H meetings, let's take a moment and we're going to say our pledges. So if you can move your hats if you have one. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living for my club, my community, my country, and my world. So thanks for joining me today. As I said, my name is Blake Gazaway. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist as well as the 4-H Youth Development Specialist based in Pettis County. For those of you that are not familiar with where that is, if you've been to the Missouri State Fair in Sedalia, you're about a half a block away from my office. So spend a lot of time there. We have a lot of fun, but that is where I'm at. I also oversee the program in Benton County and Henry County as well. We're excited today. I've lost my sunlight a little bit as I thought it was supposed to be 70 degrees and sunny today. However, I've got clouds here. So we're in my backyard. As I mentioned before, that woodworking is something that I thoroughly enjoy. It's just an escape and a way to get away from some of the stuff. And it's nice to be able to craft something and show off your hard work. So today we're going to be building a bird feeder just like this. This is something that's going to match our birdhouse as we built bluebird houses. So this will be something that you can hang in your backyard and help our feathered friends get some food and enjoy them as they're around. You can kind of hear some of them in the background as well. I think they know that I'm building them something that they're going to enjoy. At least I hope they do. So with that in mind, as we build this, again, like we always want to with woodworking, is we want to think about safety first. That's always our top priority. I mentioned that I've got glasses. So if you don't have glasses, definitely want to wear some safety glasses to prevent any kind of wood shavings or anything from getting in your eyes, because you got to make them last your whole life. Same with ear protection. I don't typically wear ear protection. Being outside here, the sound doesn't baffle as much, but definitely it's something that you may think about doing. If you want to wear some, I highly encourage it. Like I said, I typically don't, but definitely that's something, particularly too if you're inside a wood shop or a garage. The sound reverberates a little different, and so that may be something that you definitely want to do. We always want to have an adult help with this. We got 10 fingers. We want to keep all 10 fingers. We have lots of tools and things that are sharp. We have lots of ways that we can get hurt when we do woodworking, so we want to be accident free and not have any issues with that. I can tell you, if you do enough woodworking, it's only a matter of time before you get splinters, so we just got to be careful with those things. And like we said, we have lots of various tools that we want to treat very safely. So with that, I'm going to clear off my workstation here just a little bit, and then we're going to get started building our birdhouse. Our bird feeder rather. Like I said, we built a birdhouse last time. So as I mentioned, I have a lot of memories of doing woodworking and things as a kid with my parents and with my grandparents. It's still something I enjoy doing now, and something that I want to do forever, basically. So for today's build, what we're going to need is a piece of 1x6 by 7, so treated lumber. You can't buy, at least again where I shop, you can't buy a 7-foot board, so I actually have a 1x6 by 8, so it's a little bit longer, but that's okay. That just gives us a little bit extra in case we make some mistakes. We talked about last time too when we made it that the nominal size of the board versus what you actually buy. So even though this is a 1x6 by 8, it's really 3/4 of an inch thickness. It is 5.5 inches wide, and it's 8 feet long. So the only thing on those numbers is a third one that's actually accurate. But that's paying some history to how the boards used to be done. Again, pressure treated. We want this to last as long as it can. So pressure treated for it to last outdoors. Again, that's where they put it in a basically a big vacuum, and they put it in there. They suck all the air out. They put in the chemicals to treat it, and because it's lost the vacuum takes out all the air, it opens up the pores and the cells of the wood, and the treatment is able to get in there, permeate the cell walls, and be able to treat that. So when you buy it, particularly this one that I've got, it's still a little sticky. I can feel the moisture in it. So don't be surprised if it is a little wet when you go to use it. We're also going to need some screws. I've got 1 1/4" screws. Those screws are again treated to go with the pressure treated wood so that we don't have a chemical reaction. We need a hammer. We need a countersinking bit that looks something like this. I've got it in one of my spare drills right now. We also need a secondary drill or the same drill, but a driver to drill in drive in the screws. We need I'm gonna use my little handheld circular saw again. Also a miter saw. This is a 10-inch miter saw. It's perfect for just about everything I need to do, but we need that. Again, if you don't have a circular saw or a miter saw, you can also use a hand saw. You could use a electric circular saw. This one's a battery powered one, so there's different ways you could do it. Then we're also going to need a tape measure as well as a speed square. This thing is very vital. If you don't have one, I highly recommend you get a good speed square and put in your toolbox. We're also going to need a pair of pliers. We need some picture wire or some type of wire. This is just what I found in our drawer, was some picture wire from something. So you just need something to help hang up the birdhouse. You're also going to need a 3/8 drill bit. So I have one here, and then you're going to need a pair of 2-inch hinges like this. Doesn't matter what color, but these are the ones that I found. You're also going to need a length of dowel rod, 3X dowel rod, and then a couple pieces, which I got these pre-cut, a couple pieces of 10-inch by 6.5-inch plexiglass. So like I said, I've got a couple of these that have been pre-cut. You can buy them in a bigger sheet if you want, or you can also use glass if you wanted to on this, but I'm going to use plexiglass. It just makes it a little bit safer. So like I said, I'm going to clean off my workstation here. As I said, I have a lot of memories growing up, working in the wood shop, and having a lot of fun and building a lot of stuff, making a lot of sawdust. And it's definitely a skill that has fared me well. I forgot to, you also need a pencil. So again, I tuck the pencil inside my hat. I do wear a hat pretty often when I'm woodworking because that does help cut down on some of the sawdust, particularly as we're outside. And it's not very windy right now, but if the wind kicks up, that is something that can blow the sawdust around and get in your eye. So we want to make sure that we are trying to do everything we can not to have that happen. So hopefully you guys are enjoying our 4-H Live online learning. Myself and a colleague, Chelsea Corkins, who did many of the videos to begin with, this project has been mine and her project. So hopefully you guys are enjoying what we've been doing with it. We've had some other specialists and people help us, so thank you to them who's helped us. And I know we've got some pretty exciting things coming up that we're going to be doing as well in the future for 4-H Live online learning. So I think I've got my workstation clear. One thing I do like to do, just because my box of screws just happens to be the same height as the plate on my miter here, so that's going to help me. This board, like I said, it's 8 foot long, so it's going to be heavier than what we previously used, and it's also going to hang more off the table. So as we're cutting off of this end, it wants to flop up. So I'm going to use this to help make sure that I don't drop the board and do anything like that. Again, this pattern that we're making today, this bird feeder, it's another wonderful pattern that was made possible by the Missouri Department of Conservation. So thank you to them for putting out these patterns and being able to build something for our habitat and our wildlife. You will also need some bird seed. You can use whatever kind of bird seed you want. They have all kinds of mixes. You can find that at several different places. Depending on what kind of birds you might want to attract may depend on what kind of bird seed you're going to put in there. But whatever it is, I know that it'll attract some birds. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut all our pieces down to length. So the first piece that we're going to cut is going to be, we're going to cut 2 pieces for our roof. So they need to be 13 inches long. So remember, as we cut this stuff, we want to mark it and cut 1 piece at a time to allow for the kerf, which is the groove, the channel that is created by the blade. by the saw blade. So no matter what you're using to cut it, there's always a little bit of board that is lost with that. And so it may not make much difference in the first 2 or 3 cuts, but if you had, say, a longer board than 8 foot, if you had one that was 10 or 12 foot or 14 foot long or a 16 footer, by the time you get to the very end, your last piece is going to be way off on its measurements because you're losing some of the board every time you do it. So I'm going to put my tape measure down. I'm going to find 13 inches. I'm going to mark that. And my saw, since I'm using this, I'm just going to cut it, mark it right down the middle because that's where I can tell where my saw blade is at. If you were using a hand saw or a circular saw, again, you would want to use your speed square, put it down and mark your line so you can help follow that. So I'm going to make sure I get it lined up. Then I'm going to make the cut. Okay, so there's the first piece for our roof. So now I need to cut another one because the roof's going to go like this. So I've cut one, I need to cut the other one. So mark that one again, 13 inches. Make sure it's back against the fence. I'm going to make our cut. So that'll be our 2 roof pieces. Now the next one we need to cut our floor piece, so it's going to be 10 inches. So I'm going to put out my tape measure, clean off the burrs just a little bit from the board here. Put it at 10 inches. Mark it, make my cut. I'll remind you guys too, as you're doing our projects, if you want to comment on it, where you're watching from, what county or what part of the state or what state you're in or what country. We've had viewers from other countries and all different states watching. We like to see that stuff. But also take pictures of the build. This may be something that if you don't have all the pieces right now, that is a-okay. You can go ahead and watch this or go back to it once you get all the pieces you need and then build it. As I said, I'm based in Sedalia, which is where the state fair is. So I expect to see some of these bird feeders just like our bird houses at the state fair, and I will be going around checking and looking for some. So I hope you guys enjoy the build here. Next piece we're going to cut, we need to cut 2 of these for the sides. They need to be 9 inches each. So we're going to mark the first one and make our cut. Something else too, as we're doing these, this one has a few more pieces. If you get a little confused, you can always write on the piece and tell yourself a reminder of which piece is which. There are several that are the same length, so that kind of helps us, as it doesn't matter which one you use, just as long as you don't cut up all of the pieces for something else. So we need a second side piece here, so this one's going to be 9 inches as well. So we got our 2 side pieces done. Now we need to cut 2 pieces that are 10 inches long that will be the sides of our bird feeder. So I'm going to mark 10 inches. And something too, as you guys do more woodworking, you'll get what your preferences are. Like I talked about, when I make a mark, I usually cut right up to the left side, to my left side. So wherever that mark is, I cut right up to the edge of it. It doesn't matter which side, if you cut left or right. You just need to be consistent or know which way you're going to do that. So again, you're not losing more board. I need to cut 1 more of these. Then it's 10 inches long. as I had mentioned on our birdhouse, this is another really fun project too. That's a one board pattern. So again, one board meaning it takes one board to make it. So this is the scrap that we're going to have. That's good, just in case we make a mistake. We can go back and have an extra piece to fix anything that we may have made a mistake on. Okay, so that's going to be all we need our miter saw for. So I'm going to clear it off here. Clear off my workstation just a little bit. Sure wish my sun would come out. Maybe it'll come out towards the end. Okay, so I'm going to get two of our pieces here. These are our pieces for our sides. So if we look at our example, you can see that these sides are kind of cut. There's two different angles. There's two angles here and two on this side. So I'm going to find the center on both ends of this board. I'll find my center on this side as well. So I just broke my pencil. That happens, so I have a backup just in case. Actually, if you have an assistant, which I happen to, off camera, she would be so kind to go and sharpen my pencil for me. I would greatly appreciate it. So on that piece, we need to measure down. It needs to be down from the top. So I've got the center marked here. We need to measure down 1.5 inches. And then we're going to draw a line like this. And then we're also going to mark for the bottom here, and we're going to use our speed square to help us out with that. So I'm going to mark down 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line here. If your wood's too wet, I know pencils and pens have a hard time drawing on it. You might have to get something like a Sharpie. We just want to be careful, because anytime we draw on the wood, that's if we don't get a good cut, it's going to be really hard to get a Sharpie off of the wood. Okay, so I've got my top mark. Now the bottom piece needs to be 2 3/4 inches. So we're going to center 2 3/4 inches at the bottom mark here on the bottom. That one, I'm going to mark on the other side. Okay. Kids don't accept flying pencils from anybody. Subsequently, that's from a school teacher too. So if you can't tell, everybody's getting a little stir crazy of sorts. I know. My wife is a school teacher, and she is ready to be back and see her kids and get in her classroom. So, okay, so then I'm going to mark off this side. And you might have to mark it 2 or 3 times. That's okay, to help make sure you can see the line and follow it. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you should have something that looks like this. I'm going to grab my battery from my drill over here. Get my circular saw. I'm going to go ahead and cut this first side out. So as I mentioned, this wood is still a little bit wet. That's why we get a few of the burrs like on this side over here. So now I've got one side done. Get some sawdust off me. So now I can take this and I can trace the other side so we know what to cut. So I'm going to place it down on the other side piece. Line it up and trace the four sides of it. Oh, I lost my pencil again. Let me get my pen here. I'm going to make this last line. Just wait for my pencil to come back. Thank you. Now we'll try this one more time. Good enough. Okay, so now I'm going to cut off these ones. And my battery is probably getting kind of low, so this is a good time to make sure you have other batteries on the charger. So I'm going to go ahead and make these cuts on this last side. actually going to trade out the battery with my assistant. Thank you. I'm going to cut the other two sides. So now we have our two side pieces done. Off some sawdust. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to cut our side pieces. So we want to find the two that are 10 inches long. And if you have any doubt, it's always good to double check. Those are the ones that are 10 inches. So our sides need to be 10 inches long, and they need to be an inch and a half wide. I'm going to mark inch and a half. And an inch and a half. Inch and a half on both sides. I'll use the other side board to give me a straight edge. Now this is something too that this would probably be a lot easier if I ran it through a table saw. However, like I said, we just moved and I don't have my wood shop set up. My table saw is also about an hour and a half from here. So that's a little far away for me to go and cut these few boards. But that would be an option for you to use a table saw as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark this other board. An inch and a half. Inch and a half. Inch and a half. The last inch and a half. I will line these up again. So I'm going to very carefully use my saw. I'm going to cut these strips. So they're 10 inches long and they're an inch and a half wide. Here's my first one. And my second one. There's my third one. And finally, cut my last one. And finally, our last one. Okay, so now we need to cut a little piece that's going to go on the top of our bird feeder. That's just for a support. So it needs to be, look at my plans here, it needs to be 8.5 inches wide. So we'll go ahead and mark that and cut that. Mark that at 8.5. Go ahead and cut that little piece off. And then it needs to be 3/4 of an inch wide. And again, this is just for support, but it's also how you're going to attach the wire to it. Got my 2 marks. Mark that. Now this one you want to be really careful when you cut it. There's not a lot of extra wood to hold on to. Again, safety first. So now we have our support piece. Get a couple of things out of the way here. So now we're going to go ahead and drill holes in 2 of the side pieces that are going to hold the perch for our birds to sit on while they eat our bird seed. According to our pattern, we need to put the holes, we're going to use our 3/8 inch drill bit for the size, and we need to put them in the middle of the board and about 1/2 inch in. So I'm going to go ahead and get my drill bit ready and then mark these boards so we can drill them. Alright, one final mark here. And we'll be ready to drill them. I'm going to also drill on the back side too in that same hole just to kind of clear it up a little bit. Make it just a little bit easier for the dowel to go through. There's one done. this one up too. Okay, so now that we have those drilled, it will be ready to put our dowel rod in. So also while I have these, I'm also going to take a moment and mark the center of them, as this will be something that we'll use when we start assembling it. Looks like the sunshine maybe finally decided to join us. I'm going to mark these in the middle at 5 inches. To help us line things up. So I'm also going to put it on this side too, so that as we line these up, it'll be way easier when we go to assemble. Okay, so now the next part, we're going to start assembly. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to put our side pieces on. So we're going to move those out of the way. We're going to attach our side pieces on like this. So same thing. We know that we have a center mark here on this one. So I'm going to make a center mark on our floor, again, to help us get our measurements and line it up. I'm going to mark both sides here. This one as well. Okay, so on these we're still going to put 2 screws in, but we're going to put them just a little bit closer. So I'm actually only going to separate them by about, so I'm going to take my center mark, and I know that we only have 2.5 inches to work with, or sorry, 2 3/4 inches. So I'm going to take my line and I'm going to measure 1 inch on either direction, and that way I can put my screws in and get an idea, so that if we get too far out when we put the screws in, we're going to run out of the board like this. So we're going to go over 3/4 inch and put 1 screw on each side. I'm going to go ahead and mark that. There's 3/4 inch. And there's 3/4 inch. I'm going to mark that on both sides again. 3/4 and 3/4. So that should give us enough extra room to allow us not to run it through a board. So go ahead and mark these so we can drill them. So on this one, we're going to drill our holes with our countersinking bit, and that's actually going to be the very bottom of it. So we're going to put our screws in, and they're going to go up through the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and drill these. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start my screws in it. So I'm also going to take and transfer this line where I measured the middle here. I'm going to transfer it on, because the piece is going to go like this, so I'm going to transfer it on to the other side here so that we can line up our sides just a little bit better. Okay. So I'm going to take one of the sides, line it up with that line. Go ahead and screw it into place. So I'm going to mark this one as well, mark the center in this board. This was the one that we traced, so it didn't have that mark on there. I will do that. It'll be a little easier to line up. So we'll go ahead and line it up and screw that one in as well. Alright, so it should look something like this. So next we're going to screw on two of our side pieces that we did not drill the holes in. So there should be two of those. So they're going to go on like this to make sure that the seed doesn't fall out. So same thing, we're going to mark these real quick and drill some holes. So we're going to put them 1.5 inches in from each side. Inch and a half. Now we're going to measure up 3/8 of an inch. Go ahead and mark the second board. We'll go ahead and drill these with our countersink bit. Go ahead and start my screws in there. Alright, so we'll get our partially assembled bird feeder, and they're going to sit on the outside like this. So go ahead and line up the edges so that they are flush. Then drill it in. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. It's flush on the bottom and on the sides. Go ahead and drill it in. So now we're going to be ready to put on one of our sides for where the spindle's going to go, where the dowel's going to go that the birds will sit on. So I'm just going to line up my mark on each one of these, get a general idea. So this one we're going to use 3 screws. We're going to put one in the middle, and we're going to put one on each side that goes into the other side. So you're going to measure just to get an accurate guess. So it needs to be just about 2 inches. Actually, 1 3/4 inches is where that'll put us. I'm going to mark these 3 holes to drill. Inch and 3/4 over. 1 3/4 inches over. Go up 3/8 of an inch. So again, I'm going to go ahead and drill these and get ready to attach it. So I'm going to make sure everything's flush here. And put in middle screw first. Doesn't really matter which screw you put in. Put in the remaining 2. Okay, so before we put the other one on, we want to measure and get a good length on our dowel. So I'm going to set it here on my work table. I'm going to grab the dowel rod. Which I have. Again, this is a 3/8 of an inch dowel. So they make lots of sizes of these, but make sure you get 3/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to lay it up here. Make sure it's flush on this side. Put a mark down. And so I'm going to cut this and then use it to cut my second dowel, because we need one on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Then I'm going to mark for my second piece of dowel and cut it as well. A little tag off. So these dowels are important for the birds to use as a perch. So that's how they're going to get access to get their food. We're going to stick one end down there, make sure it's relatively flush. We'll go back and take care of that in a minute. Stick the other one in so it should look like this. And then we're going to mark this board and get it ready to put our screws in. So again, we've got our mark here in the center. So we know we want to go up 3/8 of an inch from there. Then we're going to come in on the sides 1 3/4 and 1 3/4 and go up 3/8 of an inch and measure this side up 3/8 of an inch. We're going to go ahead and drill these. Get my screws, go ahead and start these. Okay, so this one, we're going to put the dowels in as we push it down. I'm going to line it up, go ahead and screw it in. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my hammer. Make sure the dowels are flush. So now you have the perches on there for the birds to sit on so they can eat and enjoy the bird seed. Clear off my station here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to put in the center support. So that's this piece here that we cut. And so we're going to drill a couple holes and screw this in. It is a small piece, so we do want to be careful that we don't accidentally split it. But it's there to give support to make sure that the birdhouse is as true to the shape as you can. Give support, and then it's also what we put our wire on. So that's the wire here. That's what it's attached to. So we need to put our screws right in the middle of. It just needs to go right in the middle of the peak here on our top. So I'm going to measure down 3/4 of an inch. That'll be where I drill my hole. Do that on the other side. The wind is starting to kick back up, so again, I hope that doesn't mean. I thought it was going to rain earlier. It got really dark, and I thought it was going to rain. However, it did not. So we could always use a little more rain. Just kidding. We are plenty full of rain right now. So I've got these marked. I'm going to go ahead and drill them. I'll drill this side as well. Definitely think it's safe to say springtime's here. Again, you hear the birds in the background, so I think they're signaling that spring is here. So when we put this brace in, we're going to put it. We're going to put one of the corners. It doesn't matter which one you want to use, but we're going to pick one of the corners and we're going to put it in. So instead of being more like square, it's going to be more like a diamond, like this. So just going to pick one of those corners and put it even. With the top of the side. Looks pretty good. I'm going to drill it in. Make sure this side's lined up. So now we have our support in there. Like I said, that's very important. That's also how we are going to hang our birdhouse up. So far it's looking pretty good. Sorry, our bird feeder. That's how we're going to hang our bird feeder up. So now we need to look at our roof. as well as put our plexiglass on. So let me grab our plexiglass real quick. So as I said, we need 2 pieces of plexiglass for this, one for each side. These were pre-cut, so they're 10 inches wide and they're 6.5 inches long. So, or sorry, 10 inches long, 6.5 inches wide. So when we put these on, we want to leave an inch or so. So line them up at the top here, but we want to leave some room for the food, for the the seed to go through for the birds. So when we drill these, because we're going to drill 4 holes in these, we do want to be very careful because it is really easy to break this plexiglass. It's can be very fragile. So I want to be careful when we're drilling our putting our holes in and drilling them in here. Something to this plexiglass also has a film on it, so we'll take that off before we put it on. So I'm going to measure and put the screws the exact same way. These ones are going to go up 1.5 inches again. An 1.5 inches on all the sides. Measure over my 3/8 of an inch. One marked, I'll go ahead and mark the other piece of plexiglass. Measure over 1.5 inches. Other direction. And measure over our 3/8 so we can get ready to drill this. Alright, so that should be ready to drill. I'm going to grab a scrap piece of wood real quick to help drill into. So again, like I said, we want to be really careful that we don't break the plexiglass. So I'm going to take just a spare piece of wood and put the plexiglass on there and give myself a little bit better surface to drill into. And we're going to go nice and slow. There's one hole. Second one. Third one. And our last one. Okay, so we're going to drill the other piece of plexiglass as well. Drill our third hole. And our final one is coming. Okay. So now that we've got those drilled, then it's time to put them on. Now we do want to be careful as we go to put these on that we don't screw the screw down too tight because that will again break the plexiglass. So I'm going to take the film off one side. So that'll be your inside piece. Then I'm going to peel back the film on the other side just a little bit. Peel back enough that it's past the holes. So the reason why this is on there is so it doesn't get scratched and damaged as you transport it or as it's making its way to the store that you purchased them from or at your house. So we're going to peel back this film like this and like this. We're going to put our piece of plexiglass on here. And like I said, very carefully we're going to screw it on. When it starts getting a little bit tight, you want to go ahead and stop the screw. So these are actually going to sit out just a little bit, just a little ways away from the plexiglass, but that's okay. We don't want to push the plexiglass. Two more screws to put in, and we'll do the other side. So, should look something like that. Remember, we'll just leave the film on there for right now, and we'll attach the other side. So again, I'm going to peel off one side, and then peel back part of it from where the screws are. Again, if you don't find pre-cut plexiglass, that's something that any hardware store can do for you, or you can cut it yourself. One way you can do it, easiest way is actually you need an adult to help you with it. But as you get a razor blade, or razor blade works the best, but something that has a really, really sharp blade, and you mark what size you need, and then you score it. So you would get something that has a straight edge and put it down, and you're going to score it along the side and do that 3, 4, 5 times, but enough that it's scored it, and then you're going to put it over to the edge of your table, and you're going to apply quick pressure, and you're going to snap that piece off. So you really kind of want to put your hand and put your straight edge right up on the edge, and then push down forcibly, and that'll snap it off. Otherwise, it won't be a very clean break on it, and your plexiglass will have some jagged edges. So now I need to put the second piece on. So again, about the time you feel your screw getting a little bit of resistance, go ahead and start slowing down, because we don't want to break our plexiglass. All right, so now both sides are on. So I'm gonna go ahead and take off the film. So your bird feeder should look something like this. Again, we want to leave some room on the bottom, so it's about an inch or so. You want to leave on there so that the seed, when you put it in here, it'll fall through and they can have access to it. Another thing you could do is with this is, instead of screwing the plexiglass to the side like this, instead of screwing it in like this, you could cut a channel. You could use a table saw and you could cut a channel in here. And then put the plexiglass in there, cut a channel each side and just slide it in there. That would be an option as well. But this one's a little bit easier. Plus, if you don't have a table saw, it's really hard to cut it with a table saw if you don't have a table saw handy. So I'm going to put this out of the way now. For right now, the next thing we need to look at is our roof. So for a roof, we need to bevel the edges where they're going to meet. So we're going to put an angle, cut this at an angle, and do that. As you can see on here, we've beveled this edge so that it closes a little bit better. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to my little circular saw. So it has a really cool feature that you can actually, bring off a little bit, you can actually turn the saw so you can get your bevel, which is a really cool built-in feature to it. So we're going to cut a 30-degree bevel. So for this, I just need to loosen up this nut here, and then you can see that the blade is pretty straight, but I can turn this so now the blade is at a bevel. So this one can go up to a 50-degree angle. So what we need is actually a 30-degree angle. So I'm going to line it up on the 30, tighten that nut back down. So now I have my 30-degree bevel. You can see with the blade there, it's going to be a 30-degree bevel. So with our roof piece, we're going to measure in just 1/8 of an inch and put a line across the board so that we can cut along that to get the bevel, because it's really hard to get it right on the edge, cutting it with our circular saw. Now if we had a table saw handy, that'd be doable, but we're going to do it this way. Like I said, mark 1/8 of an inch and then draw a line across it so you have something to follow. The other piece as well. So now we want this bevel to be cut this way so that when we put our two pieces together, they'll match up. So I'm going to cut it on the edge of the table here. Alright, so now we're going to do our second bevel on the other piece. cut. We're going to get our birdhouse. Just get a couple more things. So our bevel pieces are going to go like this. So we're going to attach one side and we're going to hinge the other side. I'm going to mark my center, just to help me out a little bit. Same with this one. So we're going to mark these two. Put some screws in. Use the other piece too to make sure that everything lines up good. I think it does. And we're going to see where we need to put our screws. So we need to go in 2 inches to put in our screws. I'm going to go down 1.5 inches, put in the first screw. Then I'm going to go down another inch, put in the second screw. Do the same thing on this side. Go in 2 inches, go down 1.5 inches, down to 2.5 inches. And we're going to drill these. Go ahead and get my screws started. Okay, so I'm going to line these up again. Go ahead and screw these in. There goes mine. So that's one thing about working outside is sometimes the wind kicks up and your pieces fly away. So I'll go pick those up here in just a little bit. So now we need to look at putting the hinges on. That's a unique feature of this birdhouse, this bird feeder rather. It's got hinges so you can put the food in and then shut it down. You can tell we made a birdhouse in a previous episode because I've got that stuck on my mind. So I'm going to go in 2.5 inches and put a mark. And like I said, my pages blew away, but I'll go get those here in just a little bit. Put it at 2.5 on each side. So put me a little mark on there so I know where the hinges are. And these hinges we're going to use, I don't know if you can see this, is 2-inch hinges. And they are going to be great to make it easier to load this. Sometimes you see them, they have a hole drilled in it and covered, but this is what we're going to use for right now. This hinge to make it a little bit easier. I also know that I need a smaller bit, so this one's a smaller one to work with these hinges. Put this other lid piece on. Go ahead and start screwing in the hinge. Now I'm going to get the other hinge. Like I said, you need a pair of these. And put it on. Okay, so I'm going to check, make sure it works. Yep, we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting the other screws in. If you didn't want to go out and buy a hinge, a pair of hinges, you could potentially use a larger or a heavier duty hinge and just put one in the middle. You could make these, you could use some leather scraps and make your own backwood hinges. You could use a lot of things for it. I've seen people use gloves, take an old glove that has the fingers wore out of it and use that for hinges. You can get kind of creative. Like I said, if you don't want to use hinges at all, then one option would be for you to attach this other lid on there, so attach both sides and then drill a hole that you can load the feed in, and then put a covering over it so that the birds don't get down in it. But that would be one option as well. So now for our last step here, we need to put the wire on to hang it up. Like I said, I scrounged around and found some picture wire. You could use a coat hanger if you didn't have any wire. You could use whatever you have to help hang it. So I'm going to take off, about that much, just however much you want to use. I'll cut this wire. So I'm going to open our lid back up. I'm going to feed it between the part of the lid that's fastened down and our support. I'm going to feed it through between the two pieces. I'm going to wire it together. And with that, you have your completed bird feeder. And then to load it, you just open it up. And so I have some bird seed here. This is a welcome blend, so it's got a blend for several different birds on it. It's everything from chickadees and finches, woodpeckers, sparrows, jays, and doves. So I'm going to go ahead and put some feed in it. So again, it should look something like that. So the birds can come on, land on the perch. They can pick through whatever they want to. I can see this has, looks like some Milo in it, some sunflower seeds, some cracked corn, all kinds of other things. And so the birds can come in and sit there and enjoy their feeding and have a lot of fun. So typically now is a great time to put it out in the springtime, but that's going to wrap it up for our project today. I'm your host, Blake Gazaway. I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed making our bird feeder today. I enjoyed making it with you guys. Be sure and put in the comments where you're watching from. Take pictures of your build. We like to know where you're watching from, what club you're in, that you're having fun. Like I said, take photos. If it's something you go back and do as well later on, be sure and post pictures then. I hope to see a bunch of these at the Missouri State Fair in the fall. So it's been a pleasure. This is, again, one of the many fun things we get to do in 4-H is woodworking. We have tons and tons of projects. So if you're interested in joining 4-H and you want to know more, contact your local extension office. Every county in the state of Missouri has one. So contact the local office and find out how to join 4-H. Or you can also talk to the Missouri 4-H state office. They can help you out as well and get you plugged in to a club, or at least plugged into the specialist or YPA in your county to figure out what club you might want to join. So again, I'm Blake Gazaway. It's been a pleasure as your host today. Until I see you again, take care and have a wonderful day.